What's up, Warriors? Another day, but not another music reaction. We are diving into Rain's troubles, chapter by chapter. We're getting comfy, we're having coffee, and we're listening. We are just listening. I'm not commenting whilst he speaks. Rain has taken the time to share his story, and we are taking the time to really listen, not to reply. We listen to hear him. And so far, he's broken my heart over and over again. I've shed one too many tears, or maybe not enough tears, considering what he's going through. He's shaking up my inner being, but I'm grateful to be here. And like I said in the previous chapter, Rain is creating pivotal moments. He's becoming the pivotal moments for many, many, many individuals in this world. Through his music, through his illness, through his stories, through his bravery, whether in the previous life or this one, whether he got killed by a sword in the previous life, or whether he's carrying that strength into the current life. This is Rain's Troubles, Chapter 6. Let's have a listen.
I'm going to try and hold it together throughout this one.
Oh. Don't start already.
"2015 was the worst year of my life. At the end of 2014, I attended a private UK-based ME specialist clinic called Breakspear. For some reason, the treatments had sent my health nosediving, and I became more sick than I'd ever been. I became so weak that I couldn't walk to the bathroom without needing to lie on the floor to recover. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV. All I could do there was lie there in pain. It was obvious during this time that I needed to move back home with my mum again. She moved to Cardiff with a new husband, and they had a spare room, which became my tomb for the next 8 months. At this point, I was so weak that the most that I could manage to do a day was to take a shower. The rest of the time I was confined to my bed. I started reacting even more severely to foods, so every single meal had to be blended into soups or broths to avoid negative reactions. Pain constantly shot through my shin bones and through my feet, like splinters. My stomach would gurgle, and the muscles in my body would constantly twitch, spasm, and ache. My body felt drained of every single ounce of life, and I was so tired, but I was too wired to sleep. I was so full of mental fog that reading a single page on a book seemed impossible. The daylight coming in from behind the curtain hurt my eyes. Loud sounds felt overwhelming. All I could do was wait and pray for sleep, knowing that when I woke from it, nothing would change. I wouldn't feel in any way rested, and all the symptoms would persist. This went on and on and on. It was day after day of physical and mental torture. I thought of concentration camps, of prisoners of war being tortured. At least the escape of death seemed likely. During that time, I never got breaks. My whole body burned. My brain was on fire, and I had nowhere to hide. In the merciful moments where I could concentrate, I tenaciously trawled the internet, looking for ways out. My research drew me to a procedure called a fecal transplant that was having success managing things like Crohn's disease or colitis. It had also gained success in some select cases of autoimmune conditions like MS too. At the time, I felt like much of my issues were caused by dysbiosis, which means an imbalance in your gut flora. I noticed that all the food intolerances started after a large course of antibiotics for the parasite. I wondered if the parasite had wreaked havoc on my microbiome before I nuked it with antibiotics that worsened it further. Fecal transplants can introduce a whole host of probiotic bacteria into your gut, and it can re-establish a healthy homeostasis. In normal person speak, I wanted to pay to put another person's poop in my butthole. I carried on filming videos from my bed, blogging my experience. I was pretty convinced that during this time I wouldn't be alive much longer. And part of me wanted there to be some kind of document of what I'd been through in hopes that it might help someone later down the line.
And if this illness does kill me, then I want this video. I want somebody who can take notice of this video and do something with it.
I had a fundraiser open to save money for the fecal transplant, which was very slowly creeping up. I needed to save $6,000 in total. I remember my girlfriend wanting to come and visit, but telling her that I didn't want her to. There are a few reasons for this. One, I was pretty sure I was going to die soon. The day before Joe died, I'd been sat with him at a pub, catching up, playing pool, cracking jokes. I'd often wondered if I'd have been hit less hard by his death if I'd been away at university when it happened. For my girlfriend's sake, I wanted her to have distance from me. I also felt ugly. I felt unlovable. I was unable to communicate. And I didn't want her to see me like that. I watched my mum look thinner and more frail every day that she had to watch her son deteriorate. And I felt immense guilt. My mum would often walk in and find me either crying on the bathroom or kitchen floor, having no energy to get back into bed. She'd often sit with me and massage my feet, which always hurt, and she'd hum melodies to me like she would do when I was a little boy. During this whole time, I hadn't picked up my guitar. I barely had any sunlight touch my skin, and I lost a lot of weight. I was about 130 pounds at my lowest, about 8 or 9 stone, which for someone who is 6'1" is very skinny. My average weight is usually about 168 pounds, 12 stone. Every day the same thing. I'd wake up in pain, eat a meal of blended vegetables and chicken, lie with my eyes closed for hours while the world seemed to spin erratically, and I'd often cry as the bones of my legs felt like they wanted to grow out and burst out of my skin. Despite this, what I didn't know is things were about to get a lot worse. Come June, I've been in bed for about 6 months straight. I've regained some energy to leave the house every now and then to go shopping for groceries with my mum, and I've finally reached my target for the fecal transplant, and my mum drove me to the clinic to get the procedure. Everything seemed to go as smoothly as it could for such a bizarre experience. I received a colonic irrigation, which was like a car wash for your colon. Actually feels pretty good. They then proceeded to put someone else's excrement in my behind. They would repeat this process for 5 consecutive days. When I got home, I realised I felt a little odd, almost manic, and I was hopeful that this meant my energy was coming back. But it wasn't a nice feeling. As the days progressed, I started to feel an innate sense that something was very wrong. It seemed my immune system was going into some sort of overdrive. My brain was buzzing, and the more time that passed, the more uncomfortable I felt. I remember early one morning, I was lying on the kitchen floor after attempting to get a glass of water. My body hurt so much that I was digging my nails into the laminate flooring, screaming, and my mum ran in and asked me what was wrong. I remember repeating, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go," over and over again. I felt myself falling down a deep tunnel in my mind, almost as though my entire soul was tumbling down into an abyss. When I finally crashed to the bottom, I was hit with this immense feeling of stillness and peace. I stopped crying, I sat up, and my mother looked at me, puzzled. I have not felt to this day that sort of serenity that I felt in that moment. I looked around the room and everything seemed to have gained a clarity and quality. But what was most peculiar was the feeling of stillness. There seemed to be some sort of respite from the mental torture and fog in my brain. I still to this day have no explanation for what happened. I looked at my mum, I smiled at her calmly, and I told her that everything was okay now. Her partner Michael came in, and I remember them both looking at me, perplexed. I started speaking fluidly for the first time in months, but it wasn't quite me. I was cracking jokes, being witty. My mum would laugh nervously. I remember feeling as though I was coming up off an ecstasy pill. I felt this underlying feeling of euphoria. I caught myself occasionally erratically snapping my fingers or making whistling noises in between sentences, or staring at some empty part of the room as though there was somebody there, then snapping back to the space and talking to my mum. This feeling of intense euphoria lasted about 48 hours. During this time, I'd adopted some newer strange behaviours. Everything in my room that wasn't parallel bothered me, so I had to make sure it was aligned and facing the same direction. The whistle and the finger click became a new tick, and it started rising in frequency the more time that elapsed. I also noticed that I get stuck on words or sentences when talking to my mum. For example, if I was saying a sentence like, "I'm not sure how I'm feeling today," I would sometimes get stuck on the whole sentence or just a word from it and repeat it about 30 or 40 times before I could move on to the next. So I'm not sure how I'm feeling today, feeling today, today, over and over. I can't really explain why, but it's like saying it carved out a safe space for me. After about 2 days, that feeling of peace and euphoria was swapped out for a feeling of immense dread and doom. I felt fear fill my body, unlike any fear that I've ever felt. I'd often wake up in the early hours of the morning screaming at the top of my lungs, a torturous scream that would fill the whole house, a scream like my legs were being sawn off. I felt pure terror. My mum would run in and try and calm me down. Sometimes I'd be thrashing, hitting the mattress, pounding the walls. It usually ended up in me exhausting myself and her stroking my head in her lap as I sobbed and repeated the same words over and over again. Everything in these moments terrified me. The compulsion to make everything parallel became a necessity. Whenever I was in the kitchen or car and the dials were facing the wrong way, it taunted me. My mum started taking me to a weekly talk therapist in hopes it would stop me from killing myself. I did catch myself researching the most painless ways to do it. I often daydreamed about death, and it made me feel at peace. At this point, intense paranoid delusions started creeping in. I wondered if what was happening to me was demonic. I don't remember how I got there, but I remember one time speaking on the landline to someone who claimed to be an expert in dark magic. He told me that being around my mum was bad for me. He told me that she was bad. He told me that I needed to do a ritual with black wax candles in order to free myself. I remember ordering black candles from eBay, and when they arrived, I had a change of heart, and I decided against doing this dark magic ritual. I fell asleep that night, and I woke up the next day to find the candles totally melted onto the white mantelpiece that they were on. They'd never been lit. I still don't really know for certain if anything of these things happened, but the melted wax was definitely real. I remember picking it off with my nails. There were moments that my rational mind knew that I was hallucinating. Sometimes in the night I would hear perfect string quartet symphonies with no sound source for them to be coming from. I remember one time my mum took me with her to the post office because during this time I'd rarely been left in the house alone. I remember the lady behind the till reaching for some sellotape. As she tugged on the tape, it sounded as though it had been amplified 1,000 times. It was deafeningly loud. I ran out of the store crying and shaking, and I sat in the passenger seat of my mum's car, rocking back and forth, where she found me uncontrollably sobbing, repeating the words, I can't, over and over again. My paranoia grew. I boomeranged between thinking I may have been latched onto by some demonic entity, and I became suspicious of even my own family, to thinking I might be part of some sort of twisted experiment, where a group of observers were seeing how far they could push me before I snapped and shattered. My irrational mind concluded that if I start behaving in unexpected ways, I might confuse the people conducting this experiment, and they'd shut it down. I'd sit in my own bed, manically grinning in response to the jolt of pain in my legs. I'd say things to Mum and Michael which made no sense at all. This all seemed to be leading up to a very unusual day. I can't quite recall the details of how it happened because it was quite tricky to tell what was reality and what was not. But from what I remember, I was in the car with my mum, parked outside a supermarket, and I'd put my laptop on the roof of the car while I'd helped her with groceries. I'd forgotten it was there and she drove off. It wasn't until about an hour later I noticed and I started panicking. My laptop had on it hundreds of songs from my time in Brighton. It was all I had really to show for my life. I was already in such an emotionally fragile space that losing that felt like some sick, torturous joke. We drove back and searched every place it could be with no luck. As we were driving home, my mum pulled up at a junction and something in me snapped. I got out of the car and I ran away from it. I convinced myself this was still part of the experiment, because what else could explain that sort of luck? Once I got far enough away, I proceeded to strip off all my clothes, and I lay in the middle of a road staring up at the sky, laughing in hysterics. This was the opposite of how one should react to losing their computer, and so it seemed like the perfect way to confuse my observers. With time, the police showed up, as did my mother. By some miracle, she convinced them not to take me in or section me. And by a further miracle, they also relayed to my mum that a dented laptop had been handed in an hour earlier. I took this as meaning my experiment had worked. I eventually snuck off as my mum was talking to them. I wandered slowly around this unfamiliar village until I encountered the second angel I would meet in my life, this time in the form of a black homeless man. I'm not sure how we got there, but as I was walking, I turned to my side and a man dressed in tattered grey clothes was walking beside me. He asked me what was wrong, and I explained the best I could the events of the day. I explained that I'd been sick a very long time, that I was tired, so tired, and that I just wanted to be better. The homeless man paused. He put his hand on my shoulders and he stared into my eyes. His eyes had a light grey tint. They were almost white, and something about his presence made me feel incredibly safe, incredibly still. He smiled, a kind smile, and he said to me, "Everything's going to be okay, Ren." And then he vanished. I hadn't told him my name. I never hallucinated anything after that day. I have no real explanation for that day. I chalk it down to a psychotic episode or stress-induced hallucination, but the events which follow put a lot of questions in my mind. What he said to me was very simple, but also very needed. I realise a lot of people might hear these stories and just presume I'm a bit mad, a bit weird, like I do when people tell me their ghost stories. All I can do is tell you my experience and let you derive your own conclusions from it. Anyway, I got home and I started to obsessively research ways to escape this new seemingly psychotic space I was in. It's a strange thing to describe, but it was like me, Ren, was in the passenger seat of my mind while some other entity was steering the ship. I was watching myself do things like scream at night or repeat words over and over, and I think to myself, damn, that's pretty crazy. But I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Every now and then I had moments of lucidity where I was more in control. I was doing things like stimming. I had night terrors, vocal tics, I'd stutter and I'd stammer. And for me, a lot of that lined up with some sort of transitory or stress-induced autism. I'd known a family with an autistic teenager and some of the behaviours seemed to line up, which led me to a new pathway of online research. I came across this support group for a subset of children with autism called PANDAS, P-A-N-D-A-S. It was believed that these kids had the neurological infection of the streptococcus bacteria that was causing these autistic-like behaviours. I was presenting with some similar behaviours. These kids would do long courses of antibiotics and their symptoms would diminish or disappear, and they'd be seemingly normal children again. I speculated that the fecal transplant introduced a whole host of new bacteria into my gut, but that I didn't have the immune regulation to be able to control it, and it had sent my entire system into some sort of inflammation overdrive. I researched the most effective antibiotic for streptococcus, one being penicillin, and I convinced my mum to take me to the doctor, where I faked a stomach bug. I lied to him, and I said I'd had similar things in the past, and the penicillin cleared it right up. He reluctantly prescribed me a 2-week course of antibiotics because I was so persistent. I got home and I started the course. Initially, I felt fucking awful, somehow even more tired than usual, and then towards the end of the course, I noticed a definite shift in my energy and comfort. By the end of the course, my psychotic behaviours had disappeared and my energy felt a lot better. I stayed indefinitely on various herbal antibiotic supplements like oregano oil at this time, having learned that this was also active against certain pathogenic bacteria. Keep in mind also, I'm just going off script right now, keep in mind if I'd have followed the advice of most of the doctors that I'd seen at the time who were talking to me about my psychotic behaviours, I would have probably been put into a mental facility and medicated with medication that I didn't need and would have probably gotten a lot worse. So it was very lucky that I took no one tells you that antibiotics can treat psychosis, and these antibiotics did actually treat my psychosis. And I was no stranger to the placebo effect. I'd taken everything, it wasn't placebo. It didn't matter. After about a week, I'd finished the course and some of my more familiar symptoms like fatigue and pain started creeping back again. But that didn't matter, because what this whole experience had taught me was that the origin of my sickness was in fact bacterial and it was pathogenic. The biggest thing it taught me was I could actually do something about it. I was no stranger to the placebo effect after years of trialling different drugs and supplements. This wasn't placebo. I took to the internet again and found a world-renowned specialist over in Brussels who was also leading a lot of the cutting-edge research for ME. I got on the phone and made an appointment. He was booked up for the next 9 months, but that gave me enough time to save money. The antibiotics and new herbs I was taking had also given me a new lease of life, and the hope for a cure made me more determined than ever. I started having enough energy to go on walks, which was huge for me at the time. My dad would drive over to my mum's and we'd go out in the car, and I'd take photos of wildlife on beaches. I was picking up my guitar again after months in bed. I eventually invited my girlfriend over and made the decision to move back to Brighton as soon as I was strong enough to. It was around this time that I started working on the album Freckled Angels. I knew that the future tests weren't going to be cheap. I pulled together some old tracks from the days I was working with Sony, and I got hold of Eric and asked his permission to release them, which he graciously granted, so thank you, Eric. I then pulled together some newer material and compiled my first ever album from my bedroom. In those days, I had no real way of promoting myself and no energy to do shows, so it was mostly to be listened to by my friends and family. I named the album Freckled Angels after Joe. Joe was covered head to toe in freckles, and it seemed fitting to dedicate this work to one of the coolest and funniest people I ever knew. Any ounce of energy I did have from my limited reserves, I'd pour into recording that album. It's by no means a work of art, and it's a bit thematically disjointed, but some songs like Crutch or Pocket Full of Pain went a long way to photographing that time. I'ma leave you with a recording of Pocket Full of Pain. Back in those days. Enjoy. Cool.
He's so sweet.
Da 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 da. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, he does the chase.
I watch the sun when it rises, when it's climbing the sky. I sit here with the pocket full of pain. I've got tears in my juice, in my mind. There's a noose, but my hope makes me cling to the day. I wanna run with the sun and the moon and the stars till I'm running faster than my pain. I wish I could breathe out this fear, this doubt, send it into the Milky Way. I got my finger on the trigger of a Magnum 44, but survival instinct won't let me bleed. I wanna put a bullet straight in my cerebral tissues place, but my index finger won't let me squeeze. I wanna skate down my vein with the blade till the blood runs thicker than the thoughts in my head. But don't ask me why, this is not my goodbye, it's a suicide failure attempt. Dum, 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 dum. I choose life, I choose life, I choose living. Put the bottles and the pills down, I stand up, I breathe with precision. Calm washes over me like a break in the storm. I close my eyes for a minute, then my troubles transform, and I travel deep into the corners of my mind. I remember the first time I felt hopeless. I think I was 5, cause at the hands of this bully, the lessons that I learned is that this world is not so beautiful. Sometimes it can be burnt by the fires of evil that are living inside the common people just like you and like I. We'll all strive to survive, and we all climb to the top over our brothers and sisters, whether we mean to or not. And we get lost in the tide of insecurities and power-seeking fooleries, but happiness don't live inside no jewelleries. In an age of distraction, we would rather tap on our iPhones than stop a war from happening. It's heartbreaking, Satan's patiently waiting for us to mess up big time, so hell on earth will be blatant. So forgive me for wanting to blow my brains out, but I've got a change of heart. It's time for change now, rearrange now, fist in the sky. I say proud, say loud, revolution word on my brain now. It's with the people, yeah, power's with the people. If the people strive for unity, the world it could be equal. You could be the start of the beginning, a dawn of no stress, no troubles, no sinning, just living. So overthrow evil and greed, put aside your distractions, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, now welcome change with me, now welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me. Yeah, 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 yeah. Da 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 do.
I hate to break it to you, Rain, but your entire life, you are part of the damn Matrix. Everything that you've described, you're not fucking crazy. You're not local. Every bit, yes, we are being taunted. Yes, we are being friggin' put to the test, and some religions believe that it's the gods that put us to the test, or a god. Um, I believe it's the Matrix. And if you guys follow my very unfiltered X profile, then you would know that I'm making a secret of it, that I fully believe in the Matrix. And then the Matrix consistently tries and fucks us over and put us, like, really push us beyond any fucking limits that we are meant to have in place. And listening to Rain's story, it just over and over and over again. Like, the moment I think, you know what, it has to be this for the kid. Like, this has to be it. This has to be done now. Like, at some point, things need to get better for him. And then another fucking hurricane strikes. Another set of chaos strikes. It's never ending for him. And I've been experiencing, the moment I started believing the Matrix, and researching shit and realizing, okay, but hold on, this doesn't make sense. In no human's life have I seen shit like this happen. It doesn't constantly happen like this. It's one after the other, and sometimes 3, 4, 5 different things happening all at once. It does not stop. And the moment you realize, but you're up against puppet masters and NPCs, that's when it just strikes even more so. So, again, apart from the fact that I believe in the Matrix, guys, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Hello. But the spiritual being or the entities that he's been experiencing, the night terrors, remember, when you sleep, you become vulnerable. And that is when you can tap into other realms. That's when you can basically, if you're not a medium, if you're not someone who communicates on a daily with spiritual beings or other entities or whatever, then it's because our minds are pretty strong. Like, we're pretty stubborn humans, right? That's how we are wired. So you will reject any idea of, you're gonna say, no, it's bullshit, or it's hallucinations, or it's made up horror stories, or whatever the case might be. However, when we go to bed, we become vulnerable and our subconscious kicks in. And subconsciously, we are able to tap into other realms and basically make contact with entities. So, personally, and I've spoken about this before, where when I go to bed, and that's the reason why I don't sleep well. It's the reason why I don't sleep a lot. Is I get night terrors, or I get paralysis. So that's when this shit happens, and you start engaging with entities. Or the problem is, like Ren thought, he thought that they were entities attached to him, and that's why he went and approached exorcists and thought black magic is going to be needed. I mean, the fact that the black candles melted, I'm not gonna lie, Rain. You probably have some shit in your house. I'm not your mom, though. Not a fuck. Um, I'm pretty sure your mom was ready to do just about anything and everything to save your life. If she could change places with you, she would. So fuck that shit about it being your mom. But I mean, maybe even the person that you bought the candles from had some bad juju. Who knows? I mean, hey, I just moved from a freaking house where there was about to be a poltergeist. So this shit's real, and the sooner you realize it, the sooner you'll know how to deal with it when some random stuff starts happening. But ordering candles from eBay, probably not your smartest smartest moment, but I know it's desperation. I mean, what else are you supposed to fucking do? Um, I'm just so happy that you eventually realized that it's bacteria. Because throughout your entire story, like I know that it's Lyme disease now. I know that now. However, I still have not gone to research Lyme disease. Um, because I kind of wanted to first really listen to your story and hear from your point of view. I'm sure you're going to tell us a lot. About Sorry guys, I'm addressing Rain directly again. It's because I'm looking at him here on the screen, so my brain makes the switch. Um, so I'm sure Rain is going to tell us what exactly Lyme disease is, and then afterwards I'm a bit obsessed with medical stuff and natural stuff, and I trust nature for healing. So throughout the entire time when he was speaking, I'm like, yes, I I know he treated himself for parasites, but parasites also have bacteria. Um, so parasites is the main thing for all human illnesses. It is literally the cause of majority of human illnesses. And so I don't do just parasite detoxes. I live a lifestyle of daily parasite cleansing. So, for instance, wormwood tea. I drink wormwood every single night before bed. Um, and it's more maintenance than what it is um, a treatment. When I wash my fruit, vegetables, and meat, I wash it with baking soda so that I scrub it so I can get rid of whatever is on there that shouldn't be on there. Um, I do try and avoid foods like even though I freaking love eating pork, pork is pretty high in parasites. And I've gotten food poisoning once from that, so I'm very skittish now. Um, but yeah, so this entire time I was thinking, oh my God, pff, I don't know what this Lyme disease is, but I'm listening to your symptoms and I'm like, why does this sound like the root cause is going to be parasites, even though I know you said you did your parasite cleansing? So, again, bacteria, um, parasites carry. Parasites is called parasites for a reason. Like they carry their own fucking diseases. That is just gross. It's disgusting. And that is what makes us sick. So, I mean, people have come back from fucking death, basically because there was no solve, there was no cure for whatever was wrong with them, and then they all of a sudden go to some homeopath or natural healer. They get treated for parasites. Boom, the person is back to life, best life ever, no issues, never sick again. Um, so in our household, we also don't get sick, and whereas we used to be very sickly kids, but it's now as adults for the last 2 years we actively and consciously make decisions to avoid parasites and to kill parasites and to make sure that we cleanse basically daily. Um, so yeah, like I'm just really, really thankful that Rain finally is getting to the point where he's going to figure out what the hell's going on. Because it sounded now at the end of chapter 6 that he's on the right track. Um, And that spiritual entity, the black man that you met, or that Rain met, my head is just flooding with conspiracy theories now. But it's making me so happy because it means it doesn't matter who it was. It doesn't matter whether it was a spiritual being. It doesn't matter whether it was a being from a different realm, whether it was, I don't know, some religions or Christians or whatever refer to it as guardian angels. They are good and bad entities. As much as you get reapers, as much as you get hellhounds and uh, it, let's call it demons. So I'm not, guys. There's one thing you need to understand. Just because I'm not a Christian doesn't mean that I don't believe that there is a form of a hell and let's say heaven. Vikings believe in Valhalla, and Christians believe there's a heaven. I don't know what other religions believe, but in the afterlife, there are so many realms. There's not just two realms. Um, there is not just two realms. And I say this because I have seen this. Um, so yes, they are dark, very dark entities you never ever want to engage with, entities you never want to be made aware of, entities you never want to let in beyond the veil, so on our side of the plane. But then there are entities, not angels. Angels is a different celestial being. Um, but it's good, pure energy. It's energy. And yes, they can come in forms of a human. And like Rain just said, this guy disappeared in front of his eyes, yet there was a physical touch, there was a physical eye contact, there was engagement, there was tone. He knew Ren's name. How did he know Ren's name? And no, it's not fucking hallucinations. Do you know that hallucinations, especially in psychotic people, schizophrenia, I don't know what other mental illnesses make you hallucinate. Even autism. Okay, so I'm not saying autistic people hallucinate. I'm saying autistic people see things that you don't. Schizophrenic or psychotic people see things that you don't. And it's not just patterns, it's not just mathematical brilliance. It's not, yes, they have a lot of those gifts sometimes, but they see beyond the veil and they see shit that we don't always see. So, for those who have been on one of my Twitch streams before, I shared some stories about the haunted houses and stuff that I lived in, and how, so my family is, they call it to be born with the helm. So some can see entities beyond the veil. Some can see the entities who live on our side of the veil, on our plane, whether or not they should be here, whether it is spirits that's just wandering, or whether it's entities that is not from here. They're not of planet Earth. Others can engage with them. Others, me, I only sense them. They scare the crap out of me because my entire body goes into fucking static when I feel them. But I can't see them. I really can't. And back when I was still a Christian, I very much believed in you can exercise. Well, you can. Absolutely you can, because I've experienced it. You can exercise demonic beings or entities or whatever. And it got to a point where I was being pushed. Like I could feel hands on my back and I was being pushed out of the house. At the end, they didn't have their way. They disappeared or whatever because I just kept anointing the place essentially. And I was a pretty strong Christian back then. But that's why I have so much belief in the spiritual realm, the spiritual world, and I'm not closed off to anything. Like I've seen way too much to not believe stuff. So Rain, don't ever believe that it's just hallucinations. Shit happened because you're special. Very, very special, actually. Yes, you're caught up in the fucking matrix, but it's because myself and you. See, I keep addressing Rain. Rain, you just need to deal with this now. um, it's you have certain sets of values. You have certain things that you believe in, certain things that you're pushing boundaries. You are saying and doing things that the puppet masters don't like so much. And so you kind of have to expect that shit's going to happen. But find the recipe, keep pushing back, refuse to be an NPC, and yeah, you will conquer. And when there's amazing, beautiful beings, or in the most weird forms that might seem like an hallucination, that comes to encourage you and motivate you and place a hand on you and just say, Rain, it's going to be okay. Know that it's going to be okay. This was so awesome. I'm so grateful for chapter 6. I'm grateful for chapter 1 to 8. I have not even seen chapter 7 and 8. I'm feeling a bit better now. Like, even though this was a very, very hectic chapter. I can't help but feel positive because I can see what's happening. So yeah, guys, this was Rain's Troubles, chapter 6. I will see you in the next one.